Hey guys, welcome back to Spy Plays. Today we're going to be talking about how Blue Farm won my friend John a scrubland. We'll go over the tournament structure, what to expect from a cEDH tournament, and how the deck did in multiple rounds. We'll also give our overall thoughts on how the tournament was ran. If you're interested in eternal formats of Magic, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe. Also, leave a comment on what deck you take to a cEDH tournament. I'll be sure to read and reply to them. Anyways, let's get on to the video. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Jesse, and I'm here with John. We just played in a cEDH tournament was in Long Beach, California, and yeah, he won a scrubland using one of the best decks that we were talking about, which was Timna Chrome Blue Farm.
Yep.
How was that, John?
Yeah, can't say I'm too upset about it, to be completely honest.
Yeah, definitely not. All right, we're actually gonna go over just like how the event was and what was the rules and stuff right now real quick, just so you guys can get an idea of what cEDH events are going on now after COVID and all that stuff. I know they're kind of rare, just events in general, but everything's opening up now, and cEDH was kind of on the uprise before we stopped. We were trying to get events and look for events, and there wasn't a lot of them, but funny, I think after COVID there's been a lot more. Have you noticed it?
I've seen like a couple running around. I know that Tier 1 Con just happened, and one that I just went to that was nearby. But I think people are actually like trying to start making stuff happen again.
Right.
Yeah, right before COVID, I remember we were I was trying to get people playing at and having weekly tournaments at one of my local game stores collect. And then that all kind of fell through as it just, hit really hard. And,
right. Luckily, I think we're back at it. They're doing modern stuff. Let's get into, we'll get into the post that Finch and Sparrow had, just so you guys can see the tournament. So this is a tournament rules. It's win a scrubland, so that's the basis of the video. And there was a $25 entry, prizes guarantee, I guess. And then a big thing was so no proxies, which is really interesting. They said no proxies. It has an asterisk there, and it has like additional details. So basically, you could bring proxies, but it had to be the collector's edition proxy. So basically, Wizard of the Coast printed proxies. Yeah. So it had to be like legit proxies, I guess, or whatever that means. But it was a little odd because we know cEDH just in general. There are a lot of events that have been allowing proxies, even with like Legacy. They'll sometimes have like a 10 or 15 card limit, which is honestly what I try to push for, and I think you're also on that as well.
Yeah, I'm very much behind that. Like 10 card,
if it's an eternal format that's like Legacy, or it's got a lot of reserve list cards that you're able to play, it's not like Modern and stuff like that. Modern's a little cheaper, but it's still getting up there. But I think proxies in general for like boosting attendance, especially because this wasn't a sanctioned event. No Commander event is, because it's not a sanctioned format. There's no like ruling and stuff over from Wizards of the Coast. They don't own the format. It's a player-based format. So yeah, there's no house rules. Best deck and best pilot win. So first place was a scrubland. Second to fourth was a $75 credit, which is pretty good because it's $25 buy-in.
And then actually top 16 got $50 as well.
Oh, really? Okay, I see that there. Awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome because a bunch of people wound up showing up. I think
that's good. That's a good price pool for sure.
I think it was 42 people showed up.
Oh, okay.
I think it was 42.
Yeah, so it was cool. I'm really glad that he's hosting this, and I remember talking with the owner about like ways to improve it and stuff. So it's really good. Like, if you're at your local game store, I'd recommend just talking to the owner if you know like the owner or like the people that work there, and they're usually pretty cool about like getting just events set up, because I mean, if an event's happening at their store, they're gonna get people buying stuff just no matter what. It's gonna help the local game store, the more events that they can host. So now we'll get on to pretty much what decks did you see, and like how did the event go?
So the event was, first thing I'll say that was cool about it. I've been to a couple no proxy cEDH tournaments before, in paper, right? And most of the time you get like a little bit of, you get some decks that are like kind of casual that are like trying to come in just because like people can't afford the cards or whatever, and also sometimes people just want to play. But this event, like, it was probably the most competitive I've seen. There were no time twisters or anything, but a lot of people were bringing duels. Everybody was playing fast man. Everybody was playing their set of forces, and it was very legit. I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit less legit. I was like, oh,
right, because that's the thing why like a lot of cEDH players want to push the at least like a 10-15 card proxies, because if you put a restriction, it tends to make the decks just a lot weaker overall, and cEDH has always been about just playing just the best deck you can play. People don't care. Everyone I know that plays cEDH, they don't. If someone has a proxy deck, like, it's actually like welcome that they're using the best cards available.
Yeah.
We don't want to see budget. We want to see the best of the best.
But so that I wound up seeing were there were multiple Kenrith decks, there were multiple Najeela decks that both pretty strong from what I'd seen. Then we had stuff like Sisay, Food Chain Sliver, Urza, Elsha.
I'm gonna pull up Kenrith and Najeela real quick.
What did you say?
I'm gonna pull up Kenrith and Najeela for the people watching.
Very, very strong decks. There was a Malcolm Timna deck, lots of like four color stuff. Then there were like a couple. There was like a couple Staxier decks. There was like a Winota, Timna Crom Hate Bears deck, and then there was some weird Abzan Reanimator deck, or excuse me, Abzan Hate Bears / Reanimator deck. It was that Nethroy. That deck was interesting. It actually wound up doing all right. But the one thing that I noticed is it was like mostly a bunch of mid-range decks, and there was a little bit of stacks, and I think I was like one of two turbo decks there. The Malcolm Timna deck was trying to be like a turbo Adnaz deck, but other than that, I don't think there were any other turbo Naz decks there, and it was mostly just a bunch of mid-range.
Some of the mid-range. Was there, so you saw Najeela Tempo was probably I think the most played mid-range deck there.
There were multiple Najeela decks, and then there were multiple Kenrith decks too, and so I think that there was a bunch of 5-color. There was also like a Golos deck, which wasn't very good. It wasn't great.
Yeah, we were talking about that deck. That was the second game you played, right?
The kind of thing that you wind up seeing when you go into these no proxy tournaments.
Actually, a quick thing: was there any Thrasios Timna?
There was no Thrasios Timna.
That is really surprising, because that was like one of the most popular decks before COVID.
Yeah. I saw 0 Thrasios Timna decks.
That was a Flash Hulk deck for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. But so the event also wound up being a 6-round event. Assuming that you played in all the rounds. It was 4 rounds of Swiss, at which point there was a 5th round in which it would be top 16, and then each of the winners of the top 16 pod would proceed to the final pod, and then the winner of the final pod would take the scrubland. Okay,
cool. Let's go over the like notable games you had. I think the first game was actually pretty notable. Which we can talk about it. So, because we want to talk about how Blue Farm is faring against most of the decks in the format. Yeah.
The first game was actually probably one of the scariest games that I had. It was the one that I was like, I was most sure that I was not going to get out of. It wound up being a 3-player pod, and just because when there's a bunch of people entering, sometimes you wind up with 3-player pods. But so it wound up being my deck, Timna Crom Blue Farm, versus an Urza Polytyrant deck, and then Elsha top. And that game was really interesting because I was like So I was like looking at my opening hands, right? My first two I mulliganed. There was just like nothing going on. There was no fast man or anything. The hands just didn't really do anything. The third one had like a couple lands. I really don't like playing mana drain, but I chose to for this tournament because I expected there to be a lot of mid range and possibly decks that are doing like different weird things, and I just wanted to have like another versatile counter that could counter anything rather than only Force of Will.
Mana drain is definitely good into mid range.
I think, yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think I ever play mana drain in my Timnacrom deck, but I decided to for that day.
Right.
But yeah, so I went into that pot. I had a hand with a couple lands. I had a Ranger Captain of Eos, and then I had a Peer into the Abyss and like Dark Ritual, so I could get there eventually. And so what I kind of just like planned on doing was I'm like, okay, I'm going second. I can play this and then this Ranger Captain, and then just kind of try to. Oh, and I had the mana drain in my hand as well. I'm like, maybe turn 2 mana drain this guy's Elsha, and then cast like a Crom. Or maybe if I make enough mana, I can cast a Peer. But so what winds up happening is everyone's just kind of sandbagging, doing the same thing as I am. It gets to turn 3. I decide to just play my Ranger Captain. My Ranger Captain gets mana drained by the Elsha player. I'm like, all right, fine. And then right after that, after I tap out, Urza player slams a back to basics, and the game is just like...
Oof, that's rough.
Like over for me. At that point, I'm just like, oh god, because all my lands are non-basics. I play 1 basic in a deck, 1 basic island. But yeah, at that point, I'm just sitting there, and it was very sad. So like Blood Moon tends to not be great in the meta right now, but Back to Basics, if you can afford to run it,
it's rough. Yeah, I think Back to Basics is in a much better spot right now.
Yeah, that card is backbreaking. Especially in my hand that had no mana acceleration, which is such a rare thing to come by. Like, I never take a hand with very little mana acceleration, but I saw that the hand here, but I was kind of punished for it. So it got countered. All of a sudden, Back to Basics happened, and then it's basically just a 1v1 between the Urza and the Elsha deck. And so they're going at it for a bunch of turns, like countering each other's stuff. None of them are really able to resolve anything impactful. And it gets to the point where Urza's literally beating Elsha to death with its constructs. Then I remember the last couple turns. The last turn before Elsha dies, I Force of Will. I've been honestly drawing nothing. I've gone to discard like 7 times and filled up my graveyard, at which point I've noticed that like basically my out for winning this game is going Dark Ritual into Cabal Ritual into casting a Peer into the Abyss. I had 1 land. If I drew another land, I would be able to do this. And because I had what does Cabal Ritual have? It has like, I don't know. You need like Threshold or something. You need 7 cards in your.
You need Threshold, yeah, which is 7.
Yeah.
I'm pulling up Peer into the Abyss here, just so people know. This is a really good win con. A lot of Adnaz decks are actually running this as well as Adnaz, and it honestly, I think you won a lot more games with Peer into the Abyss, right?
I cast Peer into the Abyss in 5 of my 6 games.
How many games did you cast Adnaz?
1.
Oh wow.
Or I cast 2 games, but I got countered in one of them. But Peer got countered. Peer resolved 4 times, I believe, and got countered once. But yeah, so my game plan at that point was basically like, okay, just draw a black mana source. But yeah, on that last turn, he casts a Narset, and I'm like, if that Narset resolves, like I literally just am not. Peer doesn't do anything, so I have to force it, and I'm like, please don't have a counter spell after they've like kind of just been holding their hands for the last, I don't know, like 3 turns or so. It resolves, or excuse me, I'm able to counter the Narset. Then it goes to the next turn. He's dead. after that, he slams a Trinisphere. At the same time, I'm also like, oh, because I have 1 mana on board that's untapped. I've drawn a basic island at this point. I Force of Negation that one this time. Also hoping he doesn't have a counter spell. He doesn't. And then, like, right as that happens, I'm able to Cyclonic Rift the back to basics as soon as I draw land, and then open the floodgates, Dark Ritual Cabal Writ into the Peer into the Abyss, and I was just able to take it from there.
Wow.
That was...
That to be honest, that sounds like a lot of our games though, where we have multiple stacks of decks, and it's just you, and then you just with a blue farm, it's like you're just building up so many cards, and you just need to find that one that just opens the floodgates.
Yeah.
And then once you open it, it's like you're off to the races again, and you just have so much gas in your hand. You're usually able to win.
Yeah.
It's a strong. It's a very resilient deck for sure.
Yeah.
And then do you want to go into the next game or?
Yeah, well, the next game was the only game where it really kind of felt like...
so what's funny is I actually came in right as you were winning that last game. I remember.
Yeah.
For like I stopped by because I couldn't play in the tournament. I stopped by for like a couple hours. And I come in and John's just like resolving the Peer into the Abyss. I see like 40 cards in his hand. He's like just trying to go off, and I'm like, whoa, what is happening here? And I saw like the Urza player, and I'm like, damn, this looks like a good game. And that's when I noticed a lot of really, really good decks at the tournament. Yeah. And so we went on to... I was there for the second game for most of it, and also a little bit of the third. But yeah, that second game, we can just briefly go over it, because it was like...
It was basically high-power casual decks.
Yeah, it was Blue Farm, which is like, in my opinion, one of the best decks in the format, versus like high-power casual. And you really, really saw like the power difference in those decks.
Yeah, there was like a Golos deck and what? It was like Sliver Overlord or something. It was some Sliver tribal deck. And I knew both the decks were playing like they were playing generically good cards. Like they were both playing like Force of Will and Counter Magic and stuff. So basically, but they just didn't really have like great ways to win the game, or they did, but their decks just weren't concise at all. And so I was just kind of like, okay. The only way I lose this game is by like doing something stupid and like trying to go all in and then getting, countered. So I kind of just took my time, drew cards.
Yeah, to go over it, because I mean the game wasn't really like that notable, but this is something that you would see when there's a lot of like tournaments where it's like no proxies allowed, and also like just like people that are new to cEDH and building decks. Both of these decks just kind of they were both 5 color, and they kind of just shoved like cards that they thought were like really broken into one deck versus like curating a deck to actually like work together.
Yeah, have a cohesive.
That Golos deck had, I think, almost every tutor in the game, but then and then it had just like it had every tutor, and then it had Demonic Consultation, Thrassil's Oracle.
Yeah,
and I think that was like the only win con. Oh, you know what? I think it had Dual Caster Mage, like the.
No, it had like a weird, and then it had like a random Ulamog in the deck.
Right, in which you were brain freezing and it just like popped out. That was so funny. And so like you just had it was just like good stuff, but that's not a lot of like people when they get into cEDH don't realize that there's a reason there's primers, there's a reason there's decks that work good together. It's like Modern, like you can't just throw all the good Modern cards into one deck and just be like, oh, this works. I mean, you can kind of get away with it nowadays, but like cEDH is a lot different. In terms of you're playing one of, so you need the deck to like actually function really well together, and you want to be choosing the commanders that are gonna get you there the best. Like Golos is actually pretty good, but the Sliver Overlord, Sliver Overlord is like a really good casual deck. Like this is probably one of the highest power casual decks you can build, because you can just tutor like slivers, and in casual slivers are like a powerhouse. But that's the thing that like differentiates casual and competitive, is like one is trying to play like the best combos and then trying to back them up, and also use grind with your commander, or use your commander as a win con. But then the other ones are just kind of like just getting value without taking into account like, oh, maybe I need to like stop someone else, or maybe I need to slow them down. Just kind of like good stuff. We'll get on to the third game, because I think that one's pretty good, and then the last game is really important.
Third game was yeah, it was definitely a good game. I think it was actually the best game that I wound up having, or like it was the most even. So what the pod wound up being, it was like a Brea. I think it was a mid-range. It was like mid-range Brea deck. I wouldn't quite call it turbo, but it was running all the good stuff. I didn't see like it didn't. Yeah, it didn't look like it was a turbo deck though. But there was Brea, there was cEDH deck, and then there was Food Chain First Sliver. That pod was pretty legit. It was yeah. All of them were running cEDH decks, and I remember how that pod kind of went. It was very interesting because we were all just kind of eyeing each other down. I accelerated out of the gates pretty quickly, and I started amassing card advantage with both Tymna and Crom. I think I got out turn 1 Tymna, turn 2 Crom. But I also had like my eyes open because Food Chain Sliver was really doing stuff, and it looked like it was setting up pretty hard. But it got to the point where it looked like, I don't know, we were all just kind of like sitting there staring at each other. cEDH had gotten out Narset and was like keeping me from drawing cards, and then wound up stealing my Crom with a Gilded Drake. And we got to this like weird state in the game where I think like every player except cEDH cast at least one Dockside. And and so all of a sudden it was like, yeah, all of a sudden the game state wound up in the spot where the First Sliver deck had out what is it called? Vexing Shusher. And Vexing Shusher makes it almost impossible for anybody to like, if everyone has counter spells, no one is going to resolve anything important that the player with the player with the Vexing Shusher doesn't want to resolve, right? So the Vexing Shusher was out, and then Brea had gotten like 11 treasures off of the Dockside, and so Brea was just sitting there with creature removal on everything if it wanted to. And but at the same time, Brea didn't want to kill the Vexing Shusher, because the Brea player knew that if they did before it was time, that basically I could go off and try to win. So the game wound up taking really long, and it actually went to time, at which point basically on the last turn, or once turn started, I just tried to cast my Peer into the Abyss to try and win, and it got countered. And at which point I kind of realized I'm like, I'm not going to fight this. I had Mystic Remora out. The Narset was killed at this point, and we were all just kind of like staring at each other.
Right. And just for people to know, like when it goes to time, it means there's an hour on the clock for each game, because obviously the games have to end in like a timely manner. And when it goes to time, it just counts as a draw for everyone.
Yeah. So everybody had one turn to take, basically. And so I tried to like resolve that. Someone had a pact of negation, so they pacted it, and I was like, okay, I was actually sitting with 2 forces in my hand, but I knew that if I tried to counter that the Vexing Shusher would just blow me out. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna let it happen. And then basically the Brea player I could tell they were gonna try for a win. So I just dropped my hand on the table. I'm like, oops. Look at that. Double force.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And I was able to do that and convince the Brea player to just like to deluge and wipe the board, so cEDH couldn't win. Because otherwise cEDH didn't really need to cast anything to win. cEDH had my Crom, and so cEDH was like a 7/7. Could basically fetch anything out of the deck. And I'm like, we just gotta, like, we're playing for a draw at this point, boys. So I said that the Brea player who had Oracle Console in their hand, and like, yeah, and so we just basically, I got him to do that, board wiped, and then it just wound up as a draw. So that game was very interesting.
Interesting. That seemed like a pretty good game. I wonder how it would have ended if it wasn't time. But so now on the day, you're 2 wins, 1 draw, which, if you guys don't know, like in cEDH, your win percentage should be 25%. That's just like a normal win percentage. If you're above that, that's just really good. Like if you're at 30%, that's really good. So having 2 wins and a draw in a tournament with a deck kind of leads to, or kind of tends to show that your deck is performing at least well in that tournament. It is better to do like a league system for like Commander if you did want to like, get like really competitive, but in terms of just like a 1-day thing, this does show the deck's definitely performing. And then we'll get on to the last game. We can talk about that one.
Well, the last of the first 4, I'll talk about that one first, I guess. But yeah, so then this one wound up, it was pretty simple. I was playing against a Thrasios Crom Hate Bears deck.
I'll actually pull up the post because they actually posted the final game on their Facebook. And so you guys can see the cards. So it was Nagila, which John was luckily avoiding this whole time. Sisse, and then another Adnaz deck, right? Is this an Adnaz deck? Malcolm Timna, the Weaver. This is more of a... Wait, that's an interesting one, actually.
It's a very cool deck. So what happening in the 4th game? 4th game was pretty simple. It was Timna Crom Hate Bears, Marwyn Elf Ball. Deck was like okay. Then there was the same Urza Poly Tyrant deck. In that game, I just drew all my fast mana. I played turn 1 Crom, played turn 2 Timna, drew a bunch of cards. Then I just dropped a Ranger Captain of Eos, silenced everyone, and just peered into the abyss. And it was kind of just like when you have turn 1.
Oh wait, there was another game. You played 5 games.
I played 6.
You played 6. Oh wow. Okay, I didn't realize you played another game. I thought you were going on to the last game. So that's cool. So for this one, you just dropped Ranger and then won pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I just drew way more cards than anyone, and I was just kind of like, I just set up and then played that, and made sure I was good. Played that. And
people don't know Ranger is a really good card right now because it tutors a piece for you, and then it is a silence on a stick. Yeah. You just sack it when you want to go off, and you pretty much just win if you're playing Adnals.
And not only does it do that, but it's also a silence that dodges most counter spells.
Right.
And then on top of that, it also, if you're not going to win that turn, you can play it preemptively, and it makes everyone scared to try and win themselves because they know that you have that silence.
Right.
So they basically can't go for it.
That card's a house for sure.
Yeah, at which point you can untap and just win with it. I didn't even have to do that. I just drew it and played it and sacked it.
Right.
So then after that, it cut to top 16. I was at 3 wins, 1 tie at that point. I wound up in a pod with the Food Chain First Sliver deck and the Kenrith deck. It was supposed to be a 4-player pod, but one guy dropped, which is very strange.
Strange, dropping so late.
But so then there's that top 16 pod, and I think I was going second in that pod, behind the Kenrith player, with the Food Chain player going last, which I was very happy about because First Sliver Food Chain can race me.
Definitely.
One of the few decks that can race me. So they went first, I went second, and I remember I played like turn 1. I don't remember what I played turn 1, but I had a bunch of... I played a Timna turn 1. I think I went land, Mana Crypt, Rock. I went land, Mana Crypt, Chrome Mox, Rock, and then I cast Timna. Then on turn 2, I just drew an Adnaz off the top. So I tried to cast Naz, but it got Force of Negation by the Kenrith player. So I was like, sad. But after that, basically that game wound up pretty similar to the last one, where I then wound up casting Dragon Rage Channeler, which is really awesome card. I'm enjoying it. I was enjoying it.
I think it's a very, very good card. It's really good in Modern right now. People are playing it a lot in like the Izzet decks, but it's honestly, it's good enough to see cEDH play because
it's Timna decks. Yeah.
That surveil is really, really nice, and it's a really good like beater and also blocker.
Yeah, it turns out flyer for your Timna, and it just winds up, and then
getting new cards. Yeah,
good. But so yeah, I played both of those, and then I was hidden with Timna Crom, drawing a bunch of cards, and I remember I kept on like getting mana, and then I played like a Ristic Study too, and like my card draw was just they could not keep up.
Right. That is insane.
Kenrith player resolved a Dockside and was like actually pretty close to winning, but they didn't have 6 mana for Emil. But I was so they had the Kenrith out. I remember they were trying to hit me, and I actually bounced the Kenrith in combat so it wouldn't kill me.
That's funny.
And then I was hoping he would recast it to just tap out for the turn.
Which version of Kenrith was this? Was this a Druid or
a mid-range Kenrith?
Okay.
Yeah.
There's so many versions of it. That's funny.
Yeah, I was just pretty standard stuff with an oxide combo and stuff. But so I bounced that, and then I remember I'm like, please cast it. He didn't cast it, but it was weird because there were 2 opposition agents on the field. So I wound up going to my turn. I'd gotten to peer into the abyss at this point. I'd drawn into it, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, okay, I just draw a couple more cards after my combat. I cast the peer, and then a really weird series of events happens where they're both looking at each other with the peer into the abyss on the stack, and they're like, we're just gonna lose here. I had like 4 mana open after it, and I remember
that's really good. Yeah.
So one of them had a Pact of Negation. I countered that. The other one had a Mental Misstep for my Red Elemental Blast, which I rebbed the Pact. Then someone misstepped it. Then I misstepped their misstep, at which point the other player, they started to realize what was going on. And I mean, they didn't, it's not that they started to realize what was going on, but they saw that they have the opposition agents, and so they started like casting mystical tutors to try and give each other more counter magic.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It was absurd.
That is pretty funny. Yeah, sometimes the table has to work against you.
Yeah, so they did that. I countered the mystical tutor, and then with a Flusterstorm, I believe. And then, like, I think at that point I had, like, nothing left to defend this. And apparently the Kenrith player had a bounce spell. So he bounced his own... Or no, he had a kill spell. He had a Swords of Plowshare. So he plows his own opposition agent. So the Food Chain for Sliver deck can cast a Plunge into Darkness. They cast a Plunge into Darkness.
They're digging deep.
It was, so the Food Chain for Sliver deck needed to fetch. So he plowed his own opposition agent, cast the Plunge into Darkness for like 15, and just wasn't able to find any counter magic. Well, no, he found a Pact of Negation and was like, I'm going to cast it. And I'm like, why? You die.
Yeah. If people don't know, and so that's the name of our channel, literally. It's called Spy Plays. Because of that, it basically it's if you do a play that isn't like helping you or like stopping someone else from winning, or if you try to stop someone else from winning, you want to also be able to progress your game plan. Yeah. So like if you packed someone and you can't pay for it, that means that you lose. You're choosing to lose, but you're also choosing to make the other person lose. Which is just kind of that's one of the only things that's frowned upon in cEDH, because it's just kind of a dick thing to do. It's like, why would you want to make yourself lose and someone else that probably should be winning the game? Because they should be, because you're not supposed to like do a play that would intentionally make you lose. Yeah.
But so I eventually convinced him to take the Food Chain that was under the Plunge into Darkness. I'm like, I'm like, there's still an opposition agent on the board. Like, I could whiff, like 0.1% chance. But it's better than like 0% chance of dying from your pact.
Right.
Yeah, so that happens, and then I resolve the Pier into the Abyss, and then I just win from there.
Right. Pier's too strong.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the last game now. Then the Scrubland. Yeah. This is for the Scrubby.
Yeah, the final game. I was very happy. I wound up winning the die roll, so I was going first.
That's sometimes that decides games.
Yep. Really I was going first. Then it was Malcolm Timna going second, Sisse going third, and Najila going last, which I was happy about because Najila is very scary. Yeah, one of the matchups that I was trying to dodge the whole time was Najila Stacks deck. That is one of the hardest things.
Very hard.
Hardest things. Hardest like combo of decks for a turbo deck to beat. If a turbo deck sees Najila next to a Stacks deck, right. It is super hard to win through.
Najila is able to get through that because like her ability, just creating warriors, puts a clock on everyone, and when people are taking like 10 turns because they can't do anything, Najila just auto wins.
Yeah. Basically, Stacks deck will slow down the game, and then because you're playing the turbo deck with not a lot of creatures, Najila will just get in, and all of a sudden, and then when you try to actually like bounce or destroy the Stacks piece, Najila is just sitting there with like counter spells in hand and is like, no.
Exactly, because they're like feeding off each other in a weird way.
Yeah. But the Sisse deck, it was, just a normal Sisse deck, where they play like a little bit of Stacks pieces, but anything crazy. They're not, jamming every rule of law into their deck or something.
It's not a Heliod deck.
Yeah. But so I wind up going first. I wind up going land, mana vault. Or my opening hand has Dockside, Phantasmal Image, land, mana vault, Vamp Tutor, another land, and like a Flusterstorm or something, I think. Something like that. A piece of counter magic. And so I wind up going turn one, play the vault, goes around. Everyone plays a bunch of fast mana. So I'm sitting there with a Dockside in my hand, like, we like this. I guess it wasn't actually a lot until the second turn, or until after the first turn. I think there's like 3-4 artifacts that are played by the rest of the table. There's a turn one Najila, which I'm pretty scared about. And then so I just cast Crom because I'm pretty sure I'm like safe to do that. The second turn goes around, people develop their mana more, at which point there's 3 more rocks that are played. Sisse gets played as well. Taps out for that. The Najila player swings in with Najila and then plays like a land enchantment. The Malcolm Timna player tapped out for a Rhystic Study, I believe. And at this point, I think I've like drawn an extra card. So everyone, so the Najila player and the Malcolm Timna player are tapped out at this point. As I'm about to go to my turn 3, Najila player still has like 2 mana open, but none of it's actually blue. Because they had to use the Utopia Sprawl to cast something else. I forget what they cast, but they cast like a Sylvan Library, I think. Right. And so I'm going into my turn. I see that I have this Vamp Tutor and I have double Dockside. I have double Dockside on a board that makes 6 treasures, and I'm going for this shit. So I Vamp Tutor on my upkeep. It gets misstepped, at which point I'm like kind of sad. But I also have a Wish
Vamp Tutoring for?
I was gonna get Adnos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so I also have a Wishclaw Talisman in my hand. So I'm like, okay, I still have enough mana to like find the Nas and win. So I then draw for turn. I draw. I forget what I draw. I don't think it's important, but I play a land. I tap 2. I cast the Dockside. Nobody has anything for Dockside. I'm like chilling. I'm like sick. Okay. I make 6. Then I cast the Phantasmal Image. At this point, I'm able to pay for the Rhystic Study here. So I pay for that, and then I wind up having 9 mana, which is like just enough. No, I have 9 mana. Then I cast a Culling the Wake, at which point I'm making like tons of mana, right?
And it's important that it's colored.
Yeah, yeah, very important. So I go at 9 down to 2 or down to 7 because I pay for the Rhystic, and then up to 11. At which point I can Wish Claw, pay for the Wish Claw for Rhystic, and then activate it, which is 4 down to 7, and then I have Nas, and then I just cast the Nas, and I'm also able to pay for it and still hold 1 mana open. Right. At this point, I'm just like, this is gravy.
Yeah,
like
that's when you knew that scrubland was coming.
Yeah, exactly. But after that, I get the Malcolm Timna player casts a Pact of Negation, and then they like realize that they only have 4 mana on the board, and I'm like, bro, am I getting affected? And he's like, he's like, oh god. But it was like a legit tournament. You can't like make takesy backsies. So
right. I guess in that situation, did you guys talk it over? Like, hey, like you can't pack. Like you literally can't. Like, would that kind of be a thing? Did you guys talk about, or did you just play like if he did pack?
I was just kind of like talking about it, and then like we just kind of came to a group consensus that like, I don't know, this is a tournament. You know what I mean? Like we can't do like take backs like that. So I just rolled with it, and at this point I flusterstormed the Pact of Negation. And then I guess the Sisay player had been sitting on a deflecting SWAT, so luckily I have the Flusterstorm, because
oh wow, yeah, that definitely gets around it.
They make one of the Flusterstorm copies go towards my Adnaz. Right. So they move one of them to the Adnaz. At this point, I haven't paid for my Flusterstorm, so they're drawing a card, and then I have to pay 1 with my last 1 mana that's floating. Jeez. And it was funny too, because I could tell that the Sisay player had a deflecting SWAT, because he kept like looking at stuff that I was casting and be like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, you got a SWAT.
Yeah, sometimes you can tell. It's like poker.
So I did that, paid for it, and then I drew with the Nas. I got, I did what Nas does, and luckily I drew Silence off the Nas, which was nice because there's a Rhystic Study on the field, so I was able to just go Mox Diamond Silence, and after that it was just over. It
was gravy.
Yeah, it was gravy. It was
awesome.
Great.
That's awesome. So let's pull up. So what did you win off this? A scrubland, right?
Yep.
Scrubland. Was it revised, right?
I think so.
Yeah, that's a white bordered one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it gave you a beta or alpha.
No.
No, so you got a revised scrubland, which is right now going for 366. It is a reserve list card. Funny is your deck was missing this card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the cards that we didn't. So he borrowed like 20-ish cards. It was hilarious.
20. Yeah, I think like 21 cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was missing from like what I would have liked to play.
Right.
I was missing like Imperial Seal, Tundra, Scrubland, and Time Twister.
That's probably the biggest one that I think if cEDH gets a little more popular, with more tournaments and stuff like that, they're gonna start moving to tournaments, or they're gonna ban Time Twister. Like, people just don't want to play with that card. It's just it's so expensive. Like people want to play with it. It's an awesome card.
It's a liability.
It's just a liability. The card's $9,000. If you guys don't know, it's like even like moderately played, I believe, is like $9,000 right now, and who knows how far it's gonna go up. So yeah, this definitely gets into the talk of like proxies and cEDH and all that stuff, which we'll probably do a video on for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got the scrubland. You got.
Woo!
You didn't get anything else, right? That was just it.
Yeah, buddy. No, I got nothing else.
Right.
But you know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely cool. What's
Nothing
awesome
else.
is Spy Plays. That's it's your third tournament, right?
Yeah, it's my paper tournament I've won.
That's awesome. So
yeah.
John is our what is it? Metal boy. He brings home the medals. He validates our points. Yeah. So when I talk about the Bruna Grisella combo in my Heliod deck, I make sure to cite John on that one. I'm just kidding. It was a really bad combo I tried to put in here. All right, we're getting a little off topic, but yeah. So we got the scrubland, and overall, how did you feel the event was? Like, what were your like main takeaways, and how would you like to see like further events? I guess.
Yeah, having like a proxy 10 or 15 rule would be like really awesome. Just like there's some cards that you just can't, and it would make so much more accessible. Like I think that's one of the reasons we didn't see a lot of turbo.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, when you're not allowed to play as many, when you're basically like, some people had the dual lands.
Right.
I would say when we've gotten to like the final pod, most people had the dual lands. I think the Sisei player didn't. But it was like, I don't know. Yeah, when you get into those, yeah, when you're not able to play dual lands, all of a sudden, like you really don't want to be playing a bunch of shock lands every turn when you're playing your turbo Adnaz deck,
right. Especially in an Adnaz deck, because every life matters. That's another card you could draw. Yeah.
So that was another reason why I'm like expecting more mid range, and I geared for that. And I was rewarded for gearing towards that.
Definitely.
But yeah, having the ability to just proxy that many cards would open up so much, because players are able to like proxy their dual lands and then get like their Lion's Eye Diamond.
That's one. I let them borrow mine.
Tournament was ran really well, and it was like, yeah, it was very competitive and for these no proxy tournaments, and yeah, I was happy to be a part of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm glad they're doing more and more events like that. I'll definitely be putting my Godo in the next one.
Hell yeah.
We'll see how that goes. I think overall it was a good showing for sure. There was like 50, right?
There was 42.
42. Oh, that's right, because they also had casual going on at the same time, but it was actually mainly cEDH people.
Yeah, it was mainly cEDH,
which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to thank Finch and Sparrow for hosting that. It's a local game store near us, and then we're also like, I talk with some of the game store owners by me and try to get them to host some cEDH stuff, and they're definitely down for it. So I know there's some other game stores near us that do have tournaments, and honestly, I'd be looking for, if you guys are out there, like some type of league play, either online or I like playing in paper personally. I don't like online as much, but league play is honestly the best way to test out decks, because you can get a good sample size, which you need in cEDH for sure.
And honestly, like I feel like playing in paper is so important as well, because a lot of cEDH involves reading body language and being able to discern like what people have. When you're playing it online, you're able to do like a lot less of that, and I don't know, I don't like it as much. I still play a lot online just because I can't stop.
Play online,
yeah, but it's so much better to play in person.
Right. Everyone that plays Magic knows that in person, if you got a good game store and you like the people you play with, we have a good group, and I like to spread that spirit of just like allowing proxies and getting people into the format and not making it seem like it's a kind of like, oh, it's too much, or it's too expensive, or it's too competitive, and this is supposed to be a casual format. It's like the format's whatever you want it to be right now.
Yeah.
So I think overall it should be geared toward like competitiveness, but the format is just open, and we're just a big vocal, I guess, crowd in the format.
Yeah.
The cEDH crew. But yeah, anyways, that'll pretty much be it for our video. And so that is how Blue Farm won my friend John here at Scrubland. If you're interested in like the deck and stuff, I'll probably post like one of the primers or something, or maybe we'll make one, and then I'll have links down below to our socials and everything like that. So yeah, thank you guys for coming. And you have anything to say at the end?
Blue Farm strong.
Blue Farm strong.
Blue Farm strong.
All right, see you later, guys.